All right, we're back. We are COMP305 in the fall 2017 semester, and it's week 8, part 2 of our broadcast. And we're talking about animations, explosions. We have a bit of a problem. We can't figure it out. And there's a reason for this. Unity has gone more of a state machine than it was before. So could we put it as part of the animator for the plane? Yes, we could. We can make an animation clip so that we transition from plane to plane to explosion and then back, right? However, there isn't really a clear trigger mechanism without doing a lot more code. So I don't want to go there today. It was just for animations and simple animations. So that's I'm going to show you a different way of doing it. We know that we have a audio that's attached to the explosion, right? Anytime we hit a cloud, we get an explosion. We get an explosion sound, remember? So if you look at the mute, if I unmute the audio for a second, and I'm just going to disable the big explosion so it doesn't show, okay? And if I play the game for a second, and as I'm playing, I get this kaboom sound, like, right? So I know that that's happening. Now, if I can tell when this clip is done playing, right, the kaboom sound, and I want to time it with it anyway, right? Because if I time it so that when the kaboom sound plays, it plays the animation and then it's gone, right? When the kaboom sound dies, the animation goes away, right? Then that's what I really am looking for more than anything else. If I can just play that, right? So that's what I want to do, okay? And it's pretty quick, so it might work okay for us. It's kind of a hack, but you know, without doing what I want to do, without using more complicated methods, showing you how to use the controller today, because I want to talk about that when we do our platforming more. I won't do it that way. I'm going to use it so that when we play the explosion, when the sound is made. Now remember how we did it last time. The controller itself has control of all the sounds, the thunder sound and so on, right? So we need to get a reference to the thunder sound, the audio source that is the thunder sound, right, in our explosion. The controller is still going to make the sounds, and we need to use the game controller separate, because if we make the thunder sound part of the explosion and it explodes and we get rid of it, it's not going to play the sound, right? So that's the thing. We want to kind of get an access to this audio source. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into, this is just another way of doing it. Again, I kind of consider this a hack, but I'm going to go in my big explosion script. And I want to get access, instead of getting the animation access, just another way of doing it, I'm going to get access to something called an audio source. We did this before, where I'm going to call it the thunder sound. There we go. So that's the audio source. And if you notice, without coding it for a second, if I say thunder sound.play, right, I can play the thunder sound, but I can also say is playing, right? So I can detect if it's playing, right? So let's try that first. So first, let's get an access to the thunder sound itself. And we're going to get rid of this because it's going to cause a problem. For a second, we're going to go back to this thing. I'm going to go back to my big explosion, re-enable it. For this thing, I have my audio source, and I'm going to drag and drop from the game controller, right? The game controller itself. Here's my game controller. Now, this is something interesting, because I want to kind of drag and drop from one object to the other, right? And I have my audio source there, but I want to be able to have my game controller. Now, there's 3 audio sources. I have engine sound, I have my thunder sound, and I have my yay sound, right? That's how it goes right now. And audio source, this audio source here, this one, I mean, if I drag and drop my game controller to my big explosion, it's going to be just play the first audio source, this one, my engine sound, which is not what I want, right? But it's almost like I want to get a list of audio sources, and I want to play the first or the second one in the list. So what I could do is I could make this an audio source array, so sounds, right? That's what I could do. And I could say something like, I want to play sounds sounds 1, which would be the, I want to play that one, right? Kind of thing, because this is an array of audio sources. If I just do one of these, it's an audio source array. Actually, it's the other way around. So audio source be more like this, a list of type audio source. I'll be okay, Tom. That's what I want to get, right? And I'll call that sound for a second, just a moment. And luckily, I have my system collections generic already up here. So I have my sounds list. And I could do something like, well, my sounds, because lists are like, I can say 1 dot, and I can do is playing. I can detect that way. So that's what I want to do. Okay. But first, I got to get a kind of a list of audio sources that I get from my game object, or my game controller. So if I go back to my big explosion, and it's kind of overkill, that's why I don't like it. It's a hack. And what I want to get is this sound. Here's my sounds array. Take a look. Here's my sounds array. And I want to kind of get, if I take my game controller and drag and drop, then I should be able to grab all the game controller's audio source. I'm not sure if it's the first one that I'm getting right now or all of them. And if I have to, I'm going to have to basically make a find the game controller. I'm going to have to do it that way too, and see if I can do that. So let's see if I can do that. So I would say, so I've got my sounds. I think it's only looking at the first audio source, because it's only giving me one audio source, size of 1. That's bad. So it's only looking at the first audio source this way. Yep. Well, yep, I'm going to have to get a reference to the audio source. So we'll put that back to audio source. Sounds. It's all complex stuff, man. There's no easy way to do this, it looks like. And I wanted to make it easy for you guys, but it is what it is. I'm going to say Thunder Sound again. Thunder Sound. I need that. We can make that private in a second. But what I want to do is I want to make a reference to my game controller. So private game controller, right? Game controller. And I want to get access to it. So game controller equals to get objects, find objects of type find object of type game controller, and assign it to game controller. What I'm doing, actually, I'm saying, hey, find an object with the type game controller in the scene and assign it to the game controller, right? And then what I want to do is game controller dot, so it gives me access to the clouds, the collider, but does it give me access to the sounds? Thunder sound. It does. It does. It does. It does indeed. Thunder sound is what I want, and I want to say that Thunder sound is playing. I could do that. Is playing. If it's true, if it's is playing, then I can check that way. Okay, cool. So let's see if I can do it that way. So I don't need that one. I get this one, and I detect if the game controller Thunder Sound is playing by putting it in here. So if game controller dot Thunder Sound dot is playing, that's true. Then I'll say debug dot log Thunder Sound is playing. This is all my checking. But before I do anything crazy, because otherwise it won't work. So I want to basically put the this object in play, and I want to keep detecting if the Thunder Sound is playing. All right. So I want to recycle this explosion too. I want to make as many explosions as I need. Right. All right. Let's see this. Okay. So And this will cause us a bit of another issue later on, because I'm avoiding the problem, right? I told you it's a hack. It's not the real way to do it, right? All right, so and I can also time it. I can also use a coroutine, which is what I want to avoid. A coroutine is almost like another thread that I can run in parallel to this one. And then I can wait for the time, like a second or something like that, right? However long the explosion takes to play, or the thunder sound. And when it's done, I can get rid of it. That's another way of doing it. And if I have to, I'll go there, but I don't want to. So, but for now, all I want to do is detect whether or not I can hear the thunder playing. So let's see if that's true. So, thunder sound is playing. Right? So a bunch of them I got, right? And let's see how many I got there. I got a bunch of times the thunder sound is playing, right? But maybe too much, right? That's what I'm saying. It detects every time the thunder sound plays for as long as it's playing, right? So if the thunder sound is not playing, then I want to get rid of my explosion, right? So this is the trick that I'm going to use, right? Now, it's not a great trick, but let's try it out. So I'm going to say it's going to destroy itself. So I'm going to go back into code, and I'm going to say, if not game controller thunder sound is playing, then we're going to say destroy this. Woo. Let's see what happens there, right? So the explosion's there, and as soon as I hit a thunderclap, it's going to be gone, right? Let's go. So save and play. This is, again, a hack. So I'm playing it. I'm avoiding, see, it's right there, and I hit it. Oh, wait, I got to stop playing the thunder sound. All right, and if it's not playing, well, guess what? It didn't destroy itself. It didn't destroy itself. So why didn't it destroy itself? So thunder sound is playing. Didn't work. Because maybe this is always set to true. Let's see what it is. Let's print this out. Let's see what if we'll say, let's do a debug.log here every frame to see what it is. Debug.log. And then this is playing. I'm just going to grab this game controller. Thunderclap sound is playing. Oops. Love when I have these challenges. This is great. Good learning for everybody. And let's see if this works, right? So run it. And let's see what happens, right? False. And that is bad. Is playing. What did that do? It worked before. Game controller .thundersound that is playing is false on updates. So every update it's calling, and that should totally work. But it doesn't. It only displays true or false. Let's see if it did that. So Unity false, and it only worked once. That's really strange-o-matic. Okay, let's try that again. That's weird. Why? Yeah. I wonder. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yes, that's what I meant to do. I'll be okay. All right, let's go try that again. So what I did was I put this, not this, that's the script. It got rid of the script nicely, but that's not what we want. We don't want the script to go away. We want the game object to go away. So we want the game object attached to the script to go away, and that's why it did this. Let's try that again. Woo. All right. So, boom, no explosion, right? That's what I wanted to do. Okay, let's try it again. So if it's there, whoa. Okay, that's really bad, actually. Because guess what? There is no thunderclap. The thunderclap isn't playing, right? But somehow it's gone anyway. All right. Oh, yes, because I'm checking to see if the thunder sound is playing, and it's not playing, so it's going to destroy itself immediately. So what I want to say is check to see if the thunder sound is playing. If it's playing, turn a flag on. It's playing. When it's done playing, turn a flag off. And if the flag is off, then destroy itself. Let's make a thing. So we'll make a Boolean. This is good. Good practice. Bool. We'll make it private again, which will say, make our own little is playing. Is playing. Right? And we'll set it to, because when we instantiate this thing, it should be true, right? Right? And that's when the thunder sound happens. And we're going to say if this, if is playing is equal to false, we can say if not is playing, same thing. Then destroy this thing. Just destroy this game object. And the way we're going to detect that is to say if the thunder So we set it to true, it's playing, right? And we set it to false when it's not. Set it to false when it's not. It's kind of the same thing. We're going to get into the same loopy stuff that we got into before. Because we want to destroy the game object when the thunder sound is no longer playing, but it starts off as not playing. So we instantiate, let's just think about this. We instantiate the explosion. The thunder sound just played, right? That's how the explosion got. That's why it's not working, because our explosion is being instantiated on instantiation when I start the game. And of course, there's no thunder sound that's playing. So actually, it was right the first time. I'll be okay. What happens when I get back from 5 weeks? All right, so why is it not working? Because we want to instantiate an explosion every time we hit, right? So let's try this out. So we're going to say that there's no big explosion, but we're going to put the big explosion inside of our prefabs folder. There we go, Tom. Almost there, guys, with this little explosion causing us a big problem. All right, so here's the explosion. And what we're going to say is that when the plane explodes somehow, so again, remember how we detected stuff. If you look at our scripts, our player script, our player controller, right, has collision detection, right? So if it collides with an island, it does something. If it collides with a plane or a cloud, it does something else. We lose lives, right? But what I want to do is I want to instantiate an object, an explosion. So let's go back and make a reference to the explosion object, which we have. So in here, we'll make a reference to it. We'll say private or public. It has to be public. We'll make it over here because we want to basically drag and drop again. Public. And we'll say it'll be the game object itself. Game object. And we'll call this explosion. Big explosion. Explosion. And then we'll say when I detect a hit on the cloud, I want to instantiate a big explosion. So I'm going to say instantiate big explosion. And then the location is important, which is I want to make it so that it is the transform of this object itself. So wherever this object is, I'm going to pass in the transform, the location, rotation, and scale of the plane, and it's going to appear there. That's where the explosion is going to appear. So I'm going to instantiate a big explosion. So every time I hit a cloud. Now, when I do this, this is where it's hacky. I told you it's hacky, right? This is right. And so I can get rid of this now because this is just a prefab. But what I want to do is in my player script now, you can see that it has an additional option called big explosion. And I can go to my prefabs folder and drag and drop the big explosion and connect it to that. There we go. There's big explosion. Yay. So then what's going to happen is when I hit the cloud, now we're still going to have problems, but when I hit the cloud, the big explosion is going to instantiate and play. So let's try that out. So hit a cloud, but it hangs out for a second. See that? Watch. Right? See that? It plays. It does do what I want it to do, but it has some weird, funky effects. Let's try this again. So I don't know. So bam, and it doesn't really appear where it is. It follows me too, which is not cool. I don't want it to do that. I want it to wherever I hit, not me, but my cloud. So that's not it. So I want to get the cloud, the game objects, the collision.game objects transform. That's what I want. So collision.gameObject.transform. That's what I want. So the transform of the game object, wherever that is, I want it to hang out there for a second. And when it's done, it's going to go away. We can change the speed of the animation. Hopefully that'll help us too. So we won't do that. So bam. Let's try that again. So bam. All right. Bam. And that's pretty cool. But guess what? It does. It puts it underneath the cloud, and then we can't see it. We can't see because it's in the same space as the cloud itself. And just a second. Let me see what the other problem is. Let's play that again. It puts it in the middle of the cloud. So we see a bit of an explosion, but it's underneath the cloud, which is kind of weird, right? We want to put it on top of the cloud. And the way to do that, of course, is to look at the explosion, and we can see that the explosion has a sprite renderer, and the sprite renderer has an order and layer, and the enemy cloud itself, if I look at cloud, the order and layer is 3, and we want to put it on top of the cloud, so we see that there's an explosion. As an example. So we make this order and layer as 4, or same as the cloud 3. Let's see. Hold on. Bam. A couple explosions, and look how they lasted. We have explosions, remnants hanging out, right? And now we know that the explosion lasts longer than our audio source. Our audio source is bam, and then the explosion's hanging out still, right? It's waiting for the audio source to finish. That's what it's doing, right? So there's a couple things we can do. We're close. We're very close now, because now we have this idea of, okay, it does the thing, it attached to the cloud, but now we want this thing to go away. So I was hoping to avoid this, but there's something called a coroutine. And the way it works is this. The coroutine allows me to wait for something to happen in order for me to for it to be done. I can also do kind of a, wait for 3 seconds or whatever. I can do it that way. The other thing I can do is I can change the speed of my clip, because if you look at it, my animator right now, I have a big explosion. I have a big explosion animation. Here it is, right? And this big explosion animation that's happening has a time. It has a timing, right? If I look at the speed is 1, right? I have 7 frames that I'm going to play. Right? Now, I could slow the speed down. So I can make it so that it's timed with my cloud. So, for example, I can make this 0.8. It's a normalized speed value. So from 0 to 1, where 0 is 0% and 1 is 100%, right? So let's try a 0.8 value for this animation. So if I run it now, and it might not be right, but let's see. Right? Still almost there. So it's not 0.8. Let's try. It's going to be a little bit slower. 0.7. It's going to play, and then it's going to play that animation slower, a little bit more. It's a little bit longer. So let's say it's 0.5. I'm just slowing it down, so that way the animation speed changes, so that it doesn't play the whole animation, and then it's gone. No, it needs to be a little faster than that, because it recycles back. It recycles back. So if the animation, I can do it this way too. I can also check to see if the animation leaves the screen. And if the animation leaves the screen, the explosion leaves the screen, then I can also destroy it, right? So I can check where the animation is physically instantiated. So I can say, okay, so this is one condition. If the game controller sound is playing is stopped, and that's true. But what if the animation leaves the screen? And if you look at it, because it's going to be attached to the thing, my player's position right now is -200. So if it goes something like, I'm just going to put this down here, and I'll move it back. Again, this is a hacky situation here, but hey, we'll figure out the coroutine later. So let's say -265, something like that. When it leaves the screen, -265 or something like that, then I can do that. So I can say if the transformed out position is less than -265, then also that's the other way of doing it. right? Either one or the other is true. So if I say if transform dot position, right, is less than y is less than minus 265, that's off the screen, then also do this, destroy stuff, right? I could have put it up here, but I want just to make it more clear. Otherwise, this will be 2 lines because you're doing two checks, but I can do it in one, right? Because I'm doing the same thing. But let's just do it in 2 checks and see if it works. Because I want 2 different conditions. All right, so boom, and then it's gone, right? Now that doesn't come back, right? That's a hack, right? Look at it.
Yeah.
So that now it appears and it's gone, right? Yay! Not a great solution. But the reason why I'm showing you this is because you're going to have a similar problem like this without using a particle system. Great thing about particle system is it's more dynamic, right? But here's the challenge with it. If I make an explosion particle system, which I could do, right? I have to create the particle effect that I want, right? And after I create the particle effect itself has a lifetime, right? So when the particle effect stops playing, that I can detect directly because it's a particle system, okay? So instead of the explosion being an animation, which is what we're doing right now, I'm focusing on animations today. I'm trying, right? I want to make this explosion that's based on a particle effect instead, right? All right, so we talked about how to do that. So just to recap what I did, I went into my sprites, I created my animation, and then I dragged and dropped it into my hierarchy or inside my scene. It created the objects. I went into my animations. I created an animator, which doesn't do anything right now. And then the animator itself has a playing, which is big explosion animation. Okay, great. But this big explosion animation is playing. Okay, that's what's happening. It plays right away. It always plays, right? And what I want to do is I want to set the animation, right, so that it is gone. So there's no animation playing whatsoever, right? Or it's almost like I want to control the controller, and this is where the other way to do it, where I have another state altogether, where my sprite is not showing. It's another clip, right? As an example, it's another state, right, where my sprite isn't playing anymore. It's invisible, as an example, right? So it's there. It leaves a screen, then it just destroys itself. But in the meantime, while it's still there, I can give it a couple of things. I can make it so that it goes down the screen, like moves. The animation moves. It has nothing to do with the clouds. It moves on its own. And we may have to do that for the plane. When we kill our enemy planes, they're not moving. They're going to stay there where we killed them, right? So we want to make the animation play, and then we want to make it move, turn invisible when it's done, and make it move down the screen, right, when it's done playing. We can do that. But this is great. This system is great when I want to do something like this. I have a character, and he's on a platform, and I have an idle state, and I want to move him, and I want to change states. What I can do is I can set a parameter in here. So the animator itself, this finite state machine, has parameters that you can add. So for example, I can add a float, an int, a bool, or a trigger, right? That's what I can add. A bunch of these things. Now, if I add a trigger, right, I can call it whatever I want. Let's call this thing, done playing as an example. The done trigger, right? Notice that I can set it off for on, right? It's just a trigger, right? And then the animation itself, right? Here's the transitions, if I want to transition, right? So there's no transition, but what I could do is I could say that, because it's not going anywhere right now. There's nowhere to go, right? Like back to entry. I can't make a transition back to the entry. There's no place to go, right? I have to almost have another state here, like an empty state that doesn't play anything, right? So how do I do that? Can I add in a new state, like an empty state? Yes, I can. And let's say, for example, this empty state, right, this new state, which doesn't have any kind of animation associated with it at all, right? Let's say this animation state is called done. Right? So that's the animation state. So when the animation is going to transition from playing, I want to transition from playing to done. All right? So this is now creating, and I'm using the animator itself, the animation system itself, the finite state machine, to move from here to here. I'm never going to go back. Once I'm done, I'm done. Okay? That's what's going to happen. So I want to make this transition, and I could create a trigger. That's one way I could do it. But most commonly, what we use is an integer, right? And I can this state, this anim state, and I can call this anim state, right? And I can start off at 0, right? So it starts off at 0, and then when this anim state itself is 1, so here's my condition. So I transition from here to here, right? And when this condition, when my anim state is equal to 1, right, I transition to this done state. Okay. And now one thing to notice is Unity uses the system of blend nodes, right? So if I had different animations here, if I was blending from an idle state to a run state, it wouldn't just do a sharp cut. It would actually blend the animations from one state to the other. And it would wait until the animation was done in order for me to get there, okay? Now notice that there's something else that is automatic with Unity. This is really interesting too. Take a look. I've got an entry, and then I've got this transition, and then it says has exit time, right? So it's going to wait for the animation to stop playing before it's done, right? That's what's going to happen. But I don't want that. I want it so that way I'm going to control it based on the sound of the cloud, right? So when the sound of the cloud is done, I'm going to take it to the done state, okay? And I'm going to check this in a way where I'm going to bring the explosion back for a second to show you how this works. So it's a little different. So let's leave this has exit times on, and I have this condition called anim state, right? And I want to set it. I want to set it to 1. When I set it to 1, it's going to go to done, and done, of course, has no animations on it. There's no clip, so it shouldn't play anything anymore. Okay. Okay, let's try this out. So how does this work? So instead of doing it the way we've been doing it, I now want to have access to that same controller again, right? I'd still need this game controller so I know when this thing is playing. So I want to be able to understand when it's playing, but I also want to have access to the controller itself. So what I want to do is I want to get this public access to R, and it's going to be the animator again, which we'll call the controller. That's really what it is. Actually, it's really the animator. The controller is something else. But we'll call it the controller. All right, and then inside Unity, I'm going to go back to Unity for a second, and I'm going to go to the explosion, right? So here's the explosion prefab. I'm just going to bring this back into the scene so we can make it easier to manage for now. Notice that there is a controller, and I can just drag and drop from my animation controller like I did before, right? So I want to kind of drag this into here. That's what I want to do. So I want to kind of do one of these. There we go. So my big explosion animator is what I want, this thing here, my controller. I'm actually dragging from itself in here. I want to access my controller, right? Okay, so cool. So what I want to do is I want to say, I want to set my my integer, because notice that this is an integer, 0. It starts off at 0, and I want to set it to 1. When it goes to 1, it's going to transition to done, because that's what this animation state has. It says transition when this condition is 1, right? That's what it's going to do. All right, so let's try this out. So I'm going to say instead, I'm going to say this animator controller dot set integer, right? So I'm going to say instead of destroy this game object, right? Let's just comment this out for a second. Let's not destroy it yet. We won't do this. We'll set it up so that it hangs around. We won't destroy it. We'll say that the controller dot set integer, right? And we need the name of the integer value, the integer ID, which is anim state, right? And then the value that we're going to set it to, which is 1. Okay, so what this does is says, hey, get the integer called anim state that I created in my on my controller and set its value to 1, which is going to transition from the playing state to the done state. Okay, that's when the thunder sound is playing. Forget this for a second. I'm just commented it out. So let's see what happens when that's done. All right, so I want to see what the difference is. What I'm saying. All right, let's play and see what happens. So I'm playing, and I got a big explosion, and notice that it's there, and I haven't hit anything. But when I trigger it, right, I want to say that it's done. Right now, notice it actually transitioned. Right, and let's take a look at that now. So I play the animation, and then it goes back to this. It goes back to my original state because there is no empty state, right? There's no empty state. It does it, and then it's not done anymore, right? So what if, right? What if we had an empty state, right? And this is like a funny thing to do, but another hack. I'm putting it out there. I'm just trying to show you ways of doing that people have done before. What if the animation itself had a clip that was empty? It was like literally like an empty animation clip, right? It looked like it was invisible, like it was clear, right? That's another thing to do. So let's try it out. Now it says one thing it gave us is a bunch of references errors. It says unassigned reference exception. The variable controller of big explosion controller has not been assigned. Okay. Oh yeah, that's because we didn't apply our changes. Let's try this out. So that'll be that caused the problem. Let's try this out first. So we shouldn't get an error like that, right? Notice it hangs out. It hangs out. They're going to hang out forever, right? I've only exploded once, but that animation is going to hang out forever and ever, right? Because it hasn't transitioned away. As soon as I hit the explosion, it'll do it, and it'll hang back to the other one. Why? Because in my controller, if I go back to my animation controller, right? So here's my big explosion animator. So this one. When it's done, right? When it's done, each of these states, these clips, can have its own behavior attached to it as well, right? I want to transition to done, add a behavior, right? And the behavior is just going to be like destroy itself, right? So I could do it this way as well. And let me show you this way of doing it. So I want to make another script. So I have my big explosion controller, which so far right now has done nothing for us, right? And it's part of our explosion, the explosion itself. So here's the explosion, right? But I need it. I need the controller because otherwise I can't transition, right? That's the controller transitions for me right now. However, I'm just going to put this out there for you. What if, let's just remove this condition altogether, this big explosion controller. Let's just turn it off for now, right, to show you. I'm going to apply this all the way down, right? And if I was to play this the way it is, will it get to done anyway? Let's see what happens. Watch. So I go there, and then it stays there, right? See how it does? It doesn't go to done. It stays there forever. Once it plays, it'll stay there until it's done. And what it does is our controller, our big explosion controller right now, what it does allows us to transition from one state to the other, right? Watch. So I put it back on. Now it'll go back to this in the end. So here, and right? And then it transitions back to the last state, right? When it's done playing, eventually it's going to go back to that done state. Yay. Oh, I've got to apply. Otherwise, I won't know what the hell I'm doing. Let me try that again. Yeah, it's going to turn solid again, right? See that? That solid thing where it shows the whole explosion, that's when it's transitioned back to done, right? That's when it's happened, right? So if I've transitioned to done because my controller's told it to go there because I've set the condition to go to 1 from a 0, that's a change. That means my animation is done playing and it's ready to transition. If I'm transitioning, if I'm done playing, I want it to destroy itself. So I'll make another script. And these are, again, overkill for what we're doing, but just to explain how it works. And I'll call this explosion explosion kill, the explosion kill script. And the explosion kill script, literally, when on start, sure, reload. Sure. That's not what I wanted. Let's go back. The explosion kill script, as soon as it starts, it'll kill itself. So as soon as it gets to that explosion kill script, as soon as it runs, it'll destroy itself. So I'll say destroy, right? And again, what I want to do is the this.gameObject. Right, that's what I want to do. I want to destroy this game object when I hit the script. Okay. Now the great thing is inside of our animations, inside my big explosion animator, when I go from here to here, it actually allows me to add a behavior. Right. So here's the behavior, and I can add in a script. Right. See if I can add the script that exists by name. So we'll say explosion. Wait, I don't want to add a script. I want to attach a script on here, and I wonder if I can just drag and drop the script here. So explosion kill, and of course it doesn't do that. Okay, maybe if I can. Let's do it the other way. Let's do it the old-fashioned way. Destroy. We'll do that again. And let's make this do it. That's really weird that it did that, but. Okay, add a behavior, a new script called explosion skill. Explosion kill. And create an ad. Good. What does it say? Okay, good. Explosion kill. But the script is going to be under assets. Here it is. I'm going to take this script and put it back into my scripts folder. Let's just do that again. Right, because I couldn't access it the way I was doing it. That's fine. And yes. And let's try that again. Yes, state machine behavior. So what I want to do is, what this gives you is a different thing altogether. It's the state machine itself. So is on state enter is called when a transition starts, and the state machine starts to evaluate. It says like this state itself. And on state exit, on state update. So I want really on state enter. Once my I enter the state, so on state enter, right? What I want to do is I want to kill the game object somehow. So the animator itself, I want to see if I can do this. So I'll say that can I destroy the game object? This dot game object. I have access to this dot game object. This dot controller. How about controller? What do I have access with this? Because this is another script. This is the state machine now. On state enter. I want to change something, and that's not going to do it. I want to transition back. Oh, I do have access to the animator though. I do have access to the animator, and the animator itself has a game object. This dot, so the animator dot game object is what I want to control and destroy. And I think that's what it'll do. There we go. And let's try this out. So I want to go there and destroy the game object when I enter the state. Let's try that out. So I go there, and it's a different kind of script. Yay, that worked. So, boom. Yay. And I got to push that down. Just a moment, I got to push that script down because now my big explosion has changed. I got to apply the changes all the way down into the prefab, and that should work. Let's check this out. So, bam. Yay. Yay. Oh, didn't quite work. Transitions. Yay. Okay, we're almost there. Almost there. Right? Yay. It does work. There's a bit of a delay. So again, we're back to that other hacky stuff. So it's going to destroy itself, but it only transitions when the sound is done playing. And because it's so long, I'm listening for the sound to trigger the action, right? That's when it's actually going to transition to the done state, right? Not when. And we also have an exit condition, so we're waiting for the controller to exit. So let me go back to the animator. Notice what I said was that there is this exit time right here. This exit time, actually what it does is it waits for the transition, the explosion animation to finish before it actually does its thing. So I'm going to just unclick this to see if that makes a difference, right? So I'm not unchecking. I don't care when. If the, as an example, if the animation is not done, it'll just do it anyway. It'll kill it. So let's try this out. And that's a little better, but still quite long. Okay, let's try this out. We're almost there. We're not using coroutines, which is a good thing. I'm trying to avoid that. Yay. All right, cool. So almost there, almost there. So now what we want to do is we want to check to see. We can also reduce this transition time. This is the blend time between one and the other. We want to kind of make this like 0. So as soon as the animation stops playing, in fact, I can probably blend it back so that the animation is going to transition way earlier, like down in here. So let's see if that works. Almost. I want to play that animation faster. Now we're going to go back and play that animation faster because we turned it down. If I'm not wrong, my animation itself is down to 0.5. We'll play it at 1, and that'll cycle faster. Almost. A little too long. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. We want to apply the changes, right? Because we don't apply those changes. Try it again. Sorry, guys. I know we're playing this over and over again, but that's how it goes when we're testing, right? Almost. Okay, so can I transition even cleaner than that? So again, what am I doing? So this is the transition time. So this is the big explosion animation right here. And if you play it, you see when it's done. You can actually get a preview. Let's bring this up here. And if I can move it around for you so you can see what it looks like. So bam, and when it does it, it hangs out. See this long done? And I think I can actually reduce the size of this actual clip here because there's no size of the clip because the done clip has no time or whatever. There is nothing in it. It's just an empty clip that I'm using for, to transition to, right? So the transition itself is got to be very, very short, right? What I can do, if I'm not wrong, is make sure that the opposite is true. Just that the transition for this one is very long. Does this have a transition state as well? No, we do not. Explosion kill. I mean, it's working. It's just not working where I want it to go. Let's see if I can get the exit time. Fixed duration. Okay, let's take that off as well. And let's try that. See how that works. That's better. Let's make it a little bit more. So we'll stop that. A little faster. And we'll make sure that that transition is back to here, this animation state. Let's move it a little bit more. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so we're almost there. I think we're better. Let's try it again. Still hangs out too long. The middle explosion just disappears immediately, but the other ones, they don't like going away. Let's try that again. Hangs out there. It's like I want to transition all off from this thing. Yeah, I'm using the right methods, but I want to. I mean, I just don't want to base it on distance, because then the other explosion we're going to make, it's going to take too long, right? So that's the thing that I want to try and change. All right. So this one is this. Let's make it so if the transition is really quick like I did before, and I want to go to the done state. And the done state is pretty darn long. Can I change the size of my... Oh yeah, I can do that too. I can make the done state transition a lot earlier. So it kind of does one of those. As soon as the animation is done, then a done state kicks in. That's going to be a little weird, but okay, let's try that out. So let's save this thing and then play the animation.
Yay.
Whoa, did it replay?
Yay. Yay.
Okay, it goes away. It goes away. And it goes on exit state. When it doesn't go to that transition fluidly for some reason. Let's make sure that it is processing. I don't think there's any changes, but the animator itself, whenever I change something, I got to pass it down to the game object, right? Because the game object, the prefab, is the one that's dealing with it at the end. Yeah, so it's waiting for that sound to finish before it goes. So I transition over. I play the thing. All right, what if it wasn't on sound? So I'm trying this other effect, but it's not working because it's listening for the sound. It's doing exactly what I'm telling it to do, right? What I've been telling it to do is wait for the sound to play and then kill yourself, right? And that's inside of our big explosion controller. Here it is, big explosion controller. I'm going to reuse the explosion kill later. I don't care about this. I don't want to do the transform position because that only works for my one explosion, not the other one. And this state, to go to my anim state, is what's happening, right? I'm waiting for the animation state to happen, and then I'm changing the controller, the animation state controller, to 1. I'm changing it when I have something that triggers this state, right? So that's when I'm pushing it over to 1 when it's done, right? When the animation state is playing. And I don't want that to happen. I want to push it to 1 when I want to instantiate it and push it to 1 immediately, right? So I have that transition happen anyway, okay? So how do I do that? And I want to push it to 1 from my game object, the game object itself, right? So I'm going to go back to the game object. And the game controller itself, here's the game controller. The game controller script. What it has access to is this sound. That's the only signal that I can send it. So I guess I'm doing it okay. I'm just trying to loop it in my head just to make sure it's working. So I check collision, and then the player itself, that makes the sound, and the player itself generates the collision, right? Because the collision itself, I can detect when it's happening, right? So let me go back to my thing, and I go back to the player, my player controller, and I instantiate my game object here. My big explosion, I have access to my big explosion there, and what I want to do is I want to push its state. I want to change its state, the controller.state, to 1. I wonder if that works. So if I did it here, so I say something like big explosion, then whatever that big explosion is, I'm instantiating a big explosion, but I want to make it so that it is an explosion. I'm going to use the var keyword for that. So I'm going to say var. I'm going to call it little explosion here is equal to this explosion. I'm getting a reference to the explosion that I'm making, right? And then I'm going to say something like this: explosion that is. I want to cast it as a big explosion. So explosion as big explosion. Do that. But there is no big explosion because I have a big explosion controller. And I'm making this thing. I'm trying to cast an object as a controller. I get access to that thing, but unless I make something public on it that is unique, and that's the challenge, isn't it? Because the explosion is going to give me it's going to make a game object. And a game object is generic, right? And so because the game object is generic, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, it doesn't have the states to kind of trigger it to explode. So that's not going to be the way to do it. I'm just trying to think of a fast and dirty way. I guess I could have talked about coroutines already, but I want to make it so I can use just the anim state itself, and well, I can try playing the animation faster. How about that? Instead of playing the animation slower, I can go back to the clip. Instead of it being 1, I can make it, I don't know, 1.5. See if that's faster. And then go to the animation states.
Yay.
That doesn't do it. It's based on the, it'll play the clip. It's not that. It's just, it's so fast.
Yay.
But it doesn't destroy itself until it gets there. I wonder if I can do it when I trigger it. So instead of on triggering by itself, it has an exit condition. It has an exit condition. I'm in the big explosion state, and then I want to transition immediately. I want to transition from one state to the other. And let me go take a look at that explosion kill for a second again. So it has a bunch of states. One of them is on state enter, on state update, on state exit, on state move, on state move, on state IK, which I don't care about that. Right? No, that's the best way to do it, I guess. I just hate the fact that it just sits there, right? So, okay, we've talked hacks of hacks. Here's the hack of hacks. I'm gonna make it invisible until it destroys itself. So how do I do that? Well, the great thing is I've kept this open. I've kept this open, and I'm going to redo my crop. Right, here's my crop. This is the stuff that I had here. And you know what? Furthermore than this, I'm just going to erase pretty much everything on this thing. Again, hack of hacks, right? I'll make my size really massive. And we'll just delete all this stuff here. But we'll save this thing as explosion 8. Haha. So that's really bad. But anyways, it is what it is. Sometimes we have to do hacky stuff until we do more complex things. All right, so the last explosion 8, will be empty, like invisible. An invisible explosion. This one. And that will solve the problem because it'll be transparent. So it'll be another frame for us to get here, the transparent frame. All right, now we have to add this one. We have to add this one to my to this thing. So we have to actually add another frame in here into our animation and recreate the animation clip. So a bit of work, but not too crazy. So where is that one? I have explosion 8, and I'm going to kind of make this added in there. There's explosion 8. It's empty, right? So there's nothing to show, but it's going to actually reserve a space for it. And then I'm going to publish the sprite sheet again, which will do that, and save this sheet so we can get back to it in the future. So save project. I don't need this now because we're almost done today. I was hoping to finish earlier, but it is what it is. Let's go back to this. Okay, so now the animation that we used, which is this explosion animation, I'm going to get rid of it for a second. So I'm going to kind of delete this thing. I'm going to get back to this one in a second. I still have my animation states, which is okay. And my big explosion animator, I'm going to get rid of this one, right? And just to be sure, I'm going to create another clip that includes explosion 8. Because explosion 8 is 0. There's nothing in there. So I'm going to take this and pull it into my explosion. I'm going to make a new inside my assets animations. We're going to call this big explosion 2. And probably what I should have done is done this first, but anyways. And then inside my, I don't need this anymore, so I get rid of this, delete this thing. But inside my animations, I have this other Big Explosion 2 clip, which I'm going to name, kill this one here so we don't have a problem. Delete this one. And then, yeah, this was probably what I should have done. And then just make this the Big Explosion animation again. Animation, there we go. And then with my Big Explosion, the animator's cool, but I don't have a sprite renderer, and I'm going to get this, get rid of Big Explosion 1. Delete. Just Big Explosion Animator. There it is, Big Explosion Animator. Okay, so then what I can do is I can go back to my Big Explosion, and it needs a sprite renderer. Right now there is no sprite renderer attached to it, which I'm going to go back to my sprites and go to, sorry, my sprite sheet, and go back to that Big Explosion 1, which is the first explosion that it's going to show. And it's going to use this Big Explosion Animator again, right? But I'm going to add back that Big Explosion animation as a clip and make this the entry point, right? Set as default state, and then make a transition from this one to that one like we did before. Add the behavior, which is the explosion kill behavior when it gets there, right? And we also have this, when the Big Explosion animation goes to done, that behavior itself, it'll explode itself, right? When I click this thing here, I want to generally add a list, a condition to take me there when the anim state is 1. So all those things that we did before are going to be the same as before. So I'm going to go there, but this time, guess what? The animation is going to be invisible, so it doesn't matter when it gets there. Aha, which is the hack. Hacky. Love to be hacky. All right. And that should work. Let's go to this and apply the changes, which should do everything, and play.
Yay. Yay.
All right.
Yeah.
Big explosion. Where is the big explosion? Okay, so it is there. And what I want is on transition to the big explosion. So why is it not playing at all now? All right, so this order in layers 4, big explosion 1 is here. And why? Big explosion animator. That's a sprite renderer. So we're rendering that first sprite, which is why it's showing me this first sprite over here. There it is. And now let's figure out what's happening. It's working too well. So let's go back to the animator and go to this. What's my big explosion animation? It's 1. That's good. It's not looping, which I don't want it to loop, right? So that would be the clip itself. Loop time. It has loop time. I don't want it to loop. But it goes there and it disables itself at 12 frames per second. So there's no loop time. And then it leaves this and transitions there. No exit time. It can happen anytime. Close that up. And it's only going to get there when the anim state is 1. All right, let's try that out. See what that works. Go and go back to this and then apply the animation state to the other one and press play. Why?
Yay.
What is happening? It's working too well. Okay, so go back to the animator and let's just take that animation state to 2. Aha. That'll make us debug because it should do this. Right? And let's press it to make it play. So play. Never get there. Wow.
Yay.
It's weird, isn't it? And this disappears immediately. Whoa. What? Wait a minute. Where is that behavior? Oh, it's here. Haha. That's not where I want the behavior to be in. I don't want the behavior to be here. Remove. I want it to be here. So not on the animation, but on the done. because otherwise it'll do the behavior. As soon as it plays, it'll kill itself. Let's try that again. Yes.
Yay.
That's good. Now I want them to kill themselves, otherwise they'll last. I think they're lasting right now. Let's see if they last. So I kill them. Yes, and they have their own sub objects that become part of them. Notice that the clouds, guys, just pay attention to this one, because this is like, I know you guys are doing other things, but once I collide, notice that the clouds themselves have big explosions, and they'll last forever, and so that's why I want to get rid of them. So going back to what I did before, we're almost there. I swear this time. Go back to the transition, make this go back to 1, and yeah, this hacky way is going to work now. Let's try that. And they're gone. Beautiful. Now it works great. All right. Woo. Is this why I grow a beard and get fat? You know, in my in the time that I'm off. Okay, so you know. So the big explosion works. Let's just make sure we apply all the changes. So we did it 2 ways. One way we did it with the sound. The sound is still generating the explosion going away, right? But I made it so the hacky result was that the explosion has an empty frame. The empty frame is transparent. So the explosion plays, and then it goes away, and then the sound is gone. This is the one way to do it. The other way that I'm going to show you the next time is with a coroutine. And a coroutine is a little bit more complex to understand because it's like running another thread, like I said. And what it does is it waits for something to happen and before it does something. So an example is I can wait for the sound to stop playing, and when the sound is stopped, when it's stopped playing, then I can do something, right, with a coroutine. And it doesn't have to worry about anything else. It's not dependent on other stuff, right? Okay, so that's the way to do it with a coroutine. But now we did it this way. And we're going to do the same thing with the plane animation, so we can have these minor explosions. Notice that now when we play, actually, let me just stop that for a second. When we play now, I don't need this explosion anymore. I can run along, have the explosions, more feedback from the player, so it looks like it's actually exploding now, and then it goes away. Okay, yay, that took a long time, hours. Now we got to test it. So we've tested it on our little editor here, but that doesn't mean it's going to work, right? And I know that you're like, of course it's going to work because it's just, you know, we can just build it. Yeah, no, that doesn't work that way. So let's do a build. So we'll see build and run. We'll go to build settings for a second. I have my start main and end screens, right? This is what I have. And right now the build setting is for WebGL, right? Let's do a quick build for PC. So notice that it's set, the target platform is Mac. Obviously, I don't want to build it for Mac right now. I want to build it for Windows, right? The architecture is important. It's x86 and x86-64, right? x86-64 is the most common one we can use because we have most of our systems are 64-bit now, right? And if I go build and run, it's going to ask me where I want to save it. Now, I want to save it inside my builds folder, and I want to call this PC build. You can call it whatever you like, but I'm going to call it PC build. Notice there's an executable now that's going to be there. I'm going to save it. And what it's going to do is it's going to actually generate it pretty quick. It's way faster than the WebGL build because WebGL actually uses C++ to convert into WebGL. That's what it does. So it takes it down from C# to C++, optimizes, and then creates the WebGL build. Now this is interesting because this is our doing a build that's only for our, I'll make it windowed for sure, only for our PC. So I play it. Let's make it a little smaller window. Let's make it so that it's 1024 by 768, like the size of this standalone thing, and then play, right? This is what it looks like. So here it is on the PC. You can see that it's running in a window now. And this is really useful because if I ever want to make this game networked, right, I can have multiple windows open and almost like separate clients to check this. So I'm going to click start. It runs, right? I crash, and the explosion effect takes effect, right? I can also fire bullets, which I haven't tried this whole time, right? But you can see that Did it crash? There it is. Yeah. That's a problem. Right? And then I can keep getting this stuff and I can restart, right? Yay, okay, cool. Now so I know that works. I can also switch back into another WebGL build. Here's my WebGL build, and I can click build and run. So it's in WebGL again, right? I can select that folder, right? And it'll take much longer. And the reason why, like I said, WebGL takes longer is because it wraps JavaScript around this assembly level package to make it run. So it runs really quick, but it uses the WebGL wrapper to do that. It does not convert to WebGL. It just uses our code and uses WebGL to basically play the game, which is kind of an interesting way to do it. And you can do that strictly with code. You don't have to use Unity to do that at all. So if you're a C++ programmer, there is a gateway to do that for your own game. So if you made a C++ game and convert it, you can make it into WebGL, which is kind of neat. But Unity does it for us. So let's take a look at that while it goes down. So for your games for next week, let's just talk about next week again. Now that most of us are still here, remember that next week I'm going to ask for volunteers who's going to go first. So please have your games in a ready state so we can actually see it. Remember that there's going to be a bit of a presentation that I'm asking for too. It's not just you going up and demoing your game. I want you to talk about stuff a little bit about your game. There's actually some presentation details that I put up. And I'm going to create a Dropbox for you so you can actually submit your game finally, right? Because you should have done that before we left, but it's okay, right? And then when you do that, I'll try and give you marks that same day for the game that you're kind of submitting, okay? So again, please remember next week. I'll wait until about 8:45 to start, even though we start at 8:30. I know people kind of running late in the mornings on Saturdays. So I'll have a bit of a setup. I'll do a little bit more talking, but by 8:45, please be here with your partners so we can get going. All right, and you can see how long this bloody takes. Yeah, see this IL2 CPP? What it's doing is it's taking the binary, the native binary, from the binary to WebGL to be run in WebGL. Sorry, that's the way to do it. And that's what's happening. So again, you can actually do this for anything you have, any game you make. You can convert it to WebGL. I believe there's a binder for every kind of language out there: C#, Java, and a bunch of other languages. If you can make a game in those languages, which is kind of cool. Yeah. So this is taking its sweet time, like we know, and this is why that's why it's like 400 megs or whatever for each of these things, because we have all this stuff happening, right? And once this is done, I'll put it up to GitHub, and you'll finally have what I did. So again, I've used the big explosion animator itself. So the animator has a state. That's what I want you to take from this today. Last time we just talked about dragging and dropping and creating animations that play by themselves forever. They're looping animations. This one isn't a looping animation. This one plays once and then it's gone, right? And let's see when this is finally finished. Whew, this is taking forever. Just one thing to note as well. Did it crash? Or am I just being impatient? No, it's still working. One thing to note, on game day, so when we do our game in class, not next week, but the week after, so week 9 is next week, week 10, I'll get you to make a game in class, like I talked about, right, as an exercise. You'll have to produce a WebGL game, but please don't wait till the end, because you can see how long this takes, right? So I'm going to stop the video now and move on and put this up on GitHub, right? So instead of me getting you to wait and like watching this finish, I'll just, kind of put this up on GitHub. So compile asm.js. There we go. There's the module. It's actually, it is moving. That's what it's called, asm.js, which is assembly language, really, at the end of the day. Yeah, so I'm gonna stop the video and put it up on GitHub. If you have any questions, you hang out afterwards. If not, then I'll see you next week. Okay, thanks guys.